They traded her like cattle in front of the whole damn town, a girl too big, too plain, too easy to overlook, sold to the most dangerous man in the territory to settle a debt she didn't owe. Everyone came to watch her humiliation. They expected tears. They expected her to break. But when Elias Boone kissed her forehead instead of claiming her like property, something shifted. The crowd went silent, and Abigail Carter realized that maybe, just maybe, the monster everyone feared saw something in her that no one else ever had. Stay with me until the end of this story. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this tale travels. The church smelled like old wood and judgment. Abigail stood at the altar in a dress that didn't fit right, too tight across her shoulders, straining at the seams around her middle. She'd tried to fix it herself the night before, hands shaking as she let out what fabric she could, but there was only so much thread could do, only so much she could do. Her father hadn't looked at her once all morning. Samuel Carter sat in the front pew with his hat in his lap and his eyes on the floorboards, jaw working like he was chewing on words he'd never say out loud. Shame, maybe. Or relief. Hard to tell with him these days. The drinking had hollowed him out, turned him into something that looked like her father, but moved through the world like a ghost. The pews were packed. That was the worst part. Every face she'd ever known, every person who'd whispered about her weight behind her back, every shopkeeper who'd looked past her like she wasn't there, every boy who'd laughed when his friends dared him to dance with her. They were all here now. Watching. This wasn't a wedding, it was a spectacle. Abigail kept her eyes down, focused on the worn planks beneath her feet. Someone coughed. A baby fussed in the back. The Reverend cleared his throat, but the sound barely cut through the low buzz of whispered conversations that filled the space like flies. Can't believe he'd actually go through with it. Poor girl, having to marry him. Heard he killed 3 men in Wyoming. Well, what choice does she have? Her father gambled away everything. She felt each word like a pinprick, small, sharp, accumulating. The church doors groaned open. The whispers stopped. Abigail didn't look up right away. She didn't want to see him, didn't want to face whatever nightmare was about to become her life. But the silence was so complete, so sudden, that eventually she had to. Elias Boone filled the doorway like a storm front. He was bigger than she'd imagined, tall, broad-shouldered, moving with the kind of deliberate slowness that came from never having to hurry, never having to prove anything. His coat was dark wool, dusty from the trail. His hat cast shadows across a face that looked like it had been carved from something harder than stone. Scars traced his jawline. His eyes were the color of cold iron. He looked at her. Just looked. Not the way men usually did. That quick, dismissive scan that always landed on her body and stayed there, cataloging every flaw, every excess pound, every reason she wasn't worth their time. This was different, direct, unsettling. She couldn't read his expression. He walked down the aisle, boots heavy on the wooden floor. People shifted in their seats, some leaning back like they could put distance between themselves and whatever violence he carried with him. Mothers pulled their children closer. Men who'd been whispering went silent. Elias stopped beside her. Up close, he was even more overwhelming. She barely came up to his shoulder. Her breath caught somewhere in her chest and refused to move. Abigail Carter. His voice was low, rough-edged, not cruel, but not warm either, factual. Yes. Her own voice came out smaller than she wanted. She hated that, hated how she shrank. The Reverend fumbled with his Bible, pages rustling too loud in the quiet. Should we begin? No one answered. Elias just stood there, waiting. The Reverend started reading. Abigail didn't hear most of it. The words washed over her like water, something about commitment and covenant and binding vows, all of it meaningless when you were being sold to pay someone else's debts. Her father had lost everything in a poker game. The house, the land, money he didn't have. And when Roy Maddox came to collect, Samuel Carter had offered the only thing he had left, his daughter. But Maddox hadn't wanted her. Of course he hadn't. Men like Maddox, handsome, successful, cruel in the way that power made men cruel. They didn't want girls like Abigail, too big, too plain, too much work. So he'd sold the debt, Passed it on to someone who'd take anything. Elias Boone had paid it in full. Cash. No questions. And now here they were. "Do you, Elias Boone, take this woman?" Abigail's hands were shaking. She gripped the fabric of her dress, trying to hold still, trying not to cry. She'd promised herself she wouldn't cry. "I do." His voice cut through her spiraling thoughts. Clear, certain. The Reverend turned to her. "And do you, Abigail Carter, take this man?" She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. The silence stretched. Someone in the back pews shifted. A floorboard creaked. Her father still wasn't looking at her. "I do." The words tasted like ash. Then by the power vested in me. She wasn't listening anymore. It was done. That was it. 22 years of life, and this was how it ended. Standing in a church full of people who'd never wanted her, marrying a man who'd bought her because nobody else would. "You may kiss the bride." Her stomach dropped. This was it. The moment he'd claim her. Make it real. She'd seen the way men looked at women they owned, possessive, entitled, like examining livestock. She braced herself for rough hands, for the humiliation of being grabbed and kissed in front of everyone, for... Elias stepped closer. She closed her eyes. His hand touched her chin, gentle, carefully tilting her face up. And then, soft, brief, impossibly tender, he kissed her forehead. Her eyes flew open. The entire church gasped. Elias stepped back, expression unchanged, like he'd done exactly what he meant to do and nothing more. Abigail stared at him, heart hammering against her ribs. "That wasn't... he didn't. It's done," Elias said to the Reverend. Then he turned to the crowd. "Anyone got objections? Speak now." No one moved. "Good." He looked at Abigail. "You ready?" She didn't know what he was asking. Ready for what? Ready to leave? Ready to start whatever hell came next? But she nodded anyway, because what else could she do? He offered his arm. She hesitated, then took it. His coat was rough under her fingers, still cold from outside. They walked back down the aisle together. The crowd parted like water. No one spoke. No one smiled. They just watched, silent and stunned, as Elias Boone led his new wife out of the church and into the winter afternoon. A wagon waited outside. Simple, functional, wooden bed loaded with supplies, 2 horses hitched and ready. Elias's horse, a massive black gelding, was tied to the back. "Can you ride?" he asked. "Not well." "Wagon, then." He helped her up onto the bench. His hands were careful, supporting her weight without comment, without that subtle strain she usually saw when men had to touch her. He moved around to the other side and climbed up beside her. The church doors opened behind them. People spilled out onto the steps, still watching. Elias picked up the reins. "Might want to hold on." The wagon lurched forward. Abigail grabbed the edge of the bench, looking back at the church. At Silver Ridge, at the only home she'd ever known. Her father stood on the steps now, hat still in his hands, face unreadable. He didn't wave. She turned forward, throat tight. They rolled through town in silence, past the general store where Mrs. Henderson had always followed her with suspicious eyes, like Abigail might steal something. Past the schoolhouse where she'd spent years sitting alone at lunch. Past the saloon where her father had lost everything. No one called out goodbye. No one waved. Silver Ridge just watched her leave. The road climbed steadily into the foothills. Snow lined the path, deeper as they gained elevation. The temperature dropped. Abigail pulled her shawl tighter, wishing she'd thought to bring something warmer. But there hadn't been time. Or maybe there had been, and she just hadn't cared enough to pack properly. What did it matter what she wore into her own nightmare? "There's a blanket behind the seat," Elias said. She twisted around, found it, heavy wool, worn but clean. She pulled it over her lap. "Thank you." He nodded, but didn't respond. They rode for an hour in silence. The only sounds were the wagon wheels crunching over frozen ground, the horses breathing hard on the climb, the wind cutting through the bare trees. Abigail studied him from the corner of her eye. He sat relaxed, reins loose in his hands, but there was nothing careless about him. His gaze moved constantly, scanning the tree line, checking their back trail, alert to everything, like he expected trouble. Maybe he did. Men didn't get reputations like his by being careless. She knew the stories. Everyone did. Elias Boone had come to the territory 5 years ago from somewhere back east. Wyoming, some said, or Montana. He'd built a cabin high in the mountains, away from town, away from people. He came down maybe twice a year for supplies, paid in cash, and left before anyone could ask questions. But the rumors followed him anyway. They said he'd been a lawman once, a good one, until something went wrong. They said he'd killed 3 men in a single gunfight. Some versions said 5. They said he'd watched his family burn. They said he'd done the burning himself. Nobody knew what was true. But everyone knew he was dangerous, the kind of dangerous you didn't question, the kind you stayed away from. And now Abigail was his wife. Why? The word escaped before she could stop it. Elias glanced at her. Why what? Why did you... She struggled to find the right words. You could have kissed me, properly. That's what they expected. Didn't ask what they expected, but you wanted me to? His tone was neutral, not challenging, genuinely asking. No. She said it quickly, then quieter. No. Then why would I? She didn't have an answer for that. They climbed higher, the trees closed in, pine and spruce blocking out the late afternoon sun. Shadows stretched across the road. The temperature kept dropping. Abigail's hands were going numb even under the blanket. She tucked them into her armpits, trying to preserve warmth. How much further? Few hours still. We'll stop before dark. There's a line cabin halfway up. Line cabin? Small shelter. Used it before. Keeps the weather out. She nodded, though she didn't really understand. She'd never been this far from town, never been in mountains like these. Everything felt foreign. The thin air, the endless trees, the silence that pressed in from all sides. They rounded a bend and the road narrowed. Elias slowed the horses, guiding them carefully around exposed roots and half-frozen mud. The wagon tilted on uneven ground. Abigail grabbed the seat again, heart jumping. Easy, Elias said. Not to her, to the horses. They steadied. Do you make this trip often? She asked, just to fill the silence. When I need to. For supplies? Mostly. What do you do up there? In the mountains? He was quiet for a moment. Live. She waited for more. Nothing came. Talking to him was like pulling teeth. But the silence was worse. The silence let her think, and thinking led to panic. What was she doing? Where was she going? What would he expect when they got there? The debt, she said. My father's debt. How much was it? Doesn't matter now. It matters to me. He looked at her fully then, those iron-gray eyes weighing something. $800. She felt sick. 800. Maddox had documentation, legal claim. Your father signed papers. I know. Her voice came out bitter. He signs a lot of things when he's drunk. Elias said nothing to that. So you paid it, she continued. All of it. Why? Why would you do that for someone you don't even know? Who says I did it for you? The words hit like cold water. Right. Of course. He didn't do it for her. He did it because what? He needed a wife? Needed someone to cook and clean and warm his bed in that isolated cabin? Her stomach turned. I see, she said quietly. No, Elias said. You don't. She didn't ask what he meant. Didn't want to know. They fell back into silence. The sun was setting when they reached the line cabin. It was barely more than a shack, rough-hewn logs, a single room, a stone chimney leaking thin smoke that meant someone had been here recently. Elias pulled the wagon to a stop. Wait here. He climbed down, hand moving to the rifle under the seat. He approached the cabin slowly, checking the windows, the door. Then he disappeared inside. Abigail sat frozen on the wagon bench, watching the door. What if someone was in there? What if there was trouble? What if... Elias emerged. Clear. Someone used it last week, maybe. Fire still got embers. He came back for her, offering his hand. She took it, climbing down awkwardly. Her legs were stiff from sitting, nearly numb from cold. Go inside, he said. Get warm. I'll tend the horses. The cabin was small but surprisingly clean. A rough table, 2 chairs, a narrow cot against one wall. The fireplace still held glowing coals. Abigail fed them kindling from the stack by the hearth, coaxing flames back to life. The warmth was immediate, almost painful against her frozen skin. She stood there, hands extended toward the heat, and finally let herself think. She was married. To a stranger. A dangerous man she'd known for less than a day. And tomorrow they'd reach his cabin, his real home, deep in mountains she'd never seen. And then what? What did he expect from her? What would he demand? The door opened. Elias came in carrying their supplies, bedrolls, saddlebags, a bundle of something wrapped in cloth. "You eat yet today?" he asked. She tried to remember. The morning had been chaos, getting ready, her father's silence, the walk to the church. "No." He unwrapped the bundle. Bread, hard cheese, dried meat. Simple food, but her stomach growled at the sight of it. They ate at the small table. Elias didn't talk much, but he made sure she got her share. More than her share, actually. He kept pushing food toward her, refilling her portion. "I'm fine," she said when he offered more bread. "You're half frozen and you haven't eaten. Take it." It wasn't a suggestion. She took the bread. When they finished, he stood. "You take the cot. I'll sleep by the fire." "That's not... You don't have to..." Wasn't asking permission. He laid out his bedroll on the floor near the hearth, methodical and efficient. Then he shrugged off his coat, hung it on a peg, and sat down to pull off his boots. Abigail stood there, uncertain. Should she change? She had nothing to change into. Should she say something? Thank him? "Get some sleep," Elias said without looking at her. "Long day tomorrow." She moved to the cot. It was narrow, the blanket thin, but better than the floor. She lay down fully clothed, pulling the blanket up to her chin. The fire crackled. Wind whistled through gaps in the walls. Outside, the horses shifted and snorted. "Elias?" Her voice sounded small in the darkness. "Yeah? Why did you really do it? Buy the debt?" Silence. Long enough that she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "Roy Maddox is a bastard. He wanted your father's land, but he wanted you more. To break. To own. Heard him talking about it in town. His voice was flat, emotionless. Figured you deserved better than that. But you don't even know me. Don't have to know you to see what Maddox is." She processed that. "So you saved me?" "No." He shifted in his bedroll. "I gave you a different choice. What you do with it is yours." She didn't understand. Didn't understand him. Didn't understand any of this. But she was too tired to figure it out tonight. Sleep came in fragments, half-dreams full of faces from the church, her father's empty eyes, Roy Maddox's cruel smile, Elias's scarred hands moving with impossible gentleness. When she woke, gray dawn light filtered through the cabin's single window. Elias was already up, the fire rebuilt, coffee boiling in a dented pot. "Morning," he said. She sat up, every muscle stiff and protesting. "Morning." He handed her coffee in a tin cup. It was strong enough to strip paint, but it was hot, and that was enough. They ate quickly, more bread, some dried fruit. Then Elias packed up while Abigail tried to make herself presentable. She had no mirror, no brush. She did her best with her fingers, pulling her hair back, shaking out her dress. When she stepped outside, the world had transformed. Snow had fallen during the night. Everything was white. The trees, the ground, the wagon, the air was so cold it burned to breathe. "Is it always like this?" she asked. "Up here? Pretty much." Elias finished hitching the horses. "Gets colder." "Colder than this?" "A lot colder." He helped her onto the wagon, and they started moving again. The road was harder to see now, buried under fresh snow, but Elias seemed to know the way without needing to see it. They climbed for hours. The world narrowed to white and gray and the dark shapes of trees. Abigail's face went numb despite her shawl. She pulled the blanket up over her head, creating a small pocket of warmth. "Not much further," Elias said. She barely heard him over the wind. Then, through the trees, she saw smoke. The cabin was larger than the line shack, built solid into the side of the mountain. Logs chinked with moss and mud, a wide porch, real glass windows that caught the weak afternoon light. Behind it, the mountain rose up like a wall. In front, the land dropped away into a valley she couldn't see the bottom of. It was beautiful, and completely isolated. Elias pulled the wagon up to the porch. "Home," he said simply. He climbed down, then came around to help her. But when she tried to stand, her legs wouldn't hold her. Too cold, too stiff, too many hours sitting. She started to fall. Elias caught her, just swept her up like she weighed nothing, which she knew she didn't, and carried her toward the cabin. "I can walk," she protested. "Not right now, you can't." He kicked the door open and carried her inside, setting her down in a chair near the fireplace. The cabin was warm. A fire was already burning. "Someone's here?" Abigail looked around, alarmed. "Just me. Banked it before I left. Built to hold heat." He grabbed a blanket from a shelf and wrapped it around her shoulders. "Sit tight. I'll get the rest of the supplies." He went back outside, leaving her alone in this strange new place. The cabin was one large room with a sleeping loft above. Rough furniture, but well made. Shelves lined with books, more books than she'd expected. A proper stove for cooking, furs on the floor. Everything clean, organized, cared for. This was Elias's home, his life. And now somehow, hers too. She heard him moving outside, unloading the wagon, talking quietly to the horses. The wind howled around the cabin, but inside it was still, protected. Abigail pulled the blanket tighter and stared into the fire, trying to understand what her life had just become. The first 3 days passed in a strange, suspended reality. Elias gave her the loft, carried her things up there himself, the few items she'd brought, the clothes that didn't fit right, a small carved box that had been her mother's. He slept downstairs by the fire, just like at the line cabin. He didn't ask anything of her, didn't expect her to cook, though she tried. The first meal she made, stew from dried venison and root vegetables, came out too salty. He ate it anyway, didn't complain, didn't expect her to clean, though she did that too. Swept the floors, organized the shelves, washed their few dishes in melted snow water. Didn't touch her. Barely looked at her, actually. He moved through the cabin like she was a guest, not a wife. Polite, distant. Should have been a relief. Instead, it made her nervous. What was he waiting for? On the 4th morning, she came downstairs to find him sitting at the table, cleaning his rifle. The pieces were laid out in careful order, cloth dark with gun oil. "Coffee's hot," he said without looking up. She poured herself a cup, sat down across from him, watched his hands work, efficient, practiced, the movements of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. "Elias," she said, "What do you want from me?" His hands stilled. He looked up. "What?" "You paid $800. You brought me here. You married me." She made herself meet his eyes. "What do you want in return?" He set down the cloth. "Nothing. That's not... Nobody does something for nothing." "I do." "But why?" Her voice rose despite herself. "I don't understand. Why me? Why any of this?" Elias was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood, walked to the window, looked out at the snow-covered valley. "I told you. Maddox was going to take you, hurt you. I've seen what men like him do to women they think they own." His voice was hard. "Wasn't going to let that happen. So you bought me instead. You bought me. I paid your father's debt, legal transfer, but that's not the same as owning you. Isn't it?" He turned to face her. "No. You're here because the law says you are, because that debt needed settling. But what happens now, that's up to you." She shook her head. "I don't understand what that means." "Means you've got choices." He crossed his arms. "You want to stay in the loft, stay in the loft. Want your own space, I'll sleep in the barn. You want to leave come spring when the pass is clear, I'll take you to the next town over, give you money to start fresh, whatever you need. And if I stay, then you stay. As what? Your wife? Your what? As whatever you decide." Abigail stood up, frustration rising. "You're not making sense. Marriage means there are expectations, things a wife does, things a husband—" She couldn't finish. Understanding crossed his face. "No," he said firmly. "I'm not asking for that. But I'm not asking for anything. Not until you want to give it, if you ever want to." He moved back to the table, started reassembling his rifle. You've been told your whole life that you're not worth anything, that nobody would want you. I'm telling you that's a lie. You're worth more than what they said, more than that debt, more than Maddox, more than your father's gambling. His hands never stopped moving, fitting pieces together with quiet precision. I don't need a wife to cook my meals or warm my bed. I can do that myself. Been doing it for 5 years. He slid the barrel into place, checked the action. What I won't do is force anything on someone who's already been forced into enough. Abigail sat back down slowly. Her hands were shaking. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. Do what? This. Whatever this is. I don't know how to just exist without being what someone else wants. Elias looked at her then, really looked, with something that might have been understanding. Then start small, he said. Figure out what you want. Not what you think I want. Not what anyone else wants. Just you. And if I don't know, then you've got time to find out. The conversation ended there. He finished with his rifle, put it away, went outside to check the horses. Left her sitting at the table, coffee going cold in her hands, trying to process what he'd just said. Nobody had ever asked her what she wanted before. She wasn't sure she knew how to answer. Winter deepened. Snow fell almost daily. The world outside the cabin became a white expanse broken only by dark trees and darker stone. Some days the wind screamed so loud they couldn't hear each other talk. Other days the silence was so complete it felt like they were the last two people alive. Abigail learned the rhythms of the cabin. Elias rose before dawn, built up the fire, made coffee. He'd check the horses, bring in firewood, melt snow for water. Then he'd disappear into his work, tanning hides, carving handles for tools, repairing equipment. He was always busy, always working, but he never asked her to help. She did anyway. Started cooking properly, using the supplies he'd stocked, learning the temperament of the old stove. The meals got better. He always thanked her, always ate everything she made. She mended his clothes. They were worn, some of them torn from rough use. Her stitches were neat, careful. When she handed him a shirt she'd repaired, he examined her work with something close to surprise. "This is good," he said. "My mother taught me." "She taught you well." It was the first time he'd mentioned her mother, the first time anyone had in years. "She died when I was 12, Abigail said quietly. "Fever." Elias nodded. "I'm sorry." "My father, he wasn't the same after, started drinking, started making bad choices." She folded the rest of his shirts. "I tried to help, tried to keep us going, but it wasn't enough. Wasn't your job to fix him. He's my father. Doesn't change what I said." She wanted to argue, but she was tired of arguing, tired of defending a man who'd sold her to pay his debts. The days blurred together, morning chores, afternoon quiet, evenings by the fire. Elias would read. He had books on everything from farming to philosophy, or he'd work on small projects. Whittling, mostly. His hands were never idle. Abigail watched him sometimes when he wasn't looking, trying to understand. This man who everyone feared, who'd killed people, who lived alone in the mountains like he was hiding from the world. But he wasn't cruel, wasn't mean, he was just there. Solid, dependable. It was unsettling. One evening, about 2 weeks after they'd arrived, she came downstairs to find him cooking. The smell of frying meat filled the cabin. "What's this?" she asked. "Dinner. Sit down." "But I usually—" "Sit." She sat. He served her first. Venison steaks, fried potatoes, the last of the bread. More food than she'd normally eat. She looked at the portion, then at him. "It's too much. Eat what you want, leave what you don't." She picked up her fork, cut into the meat. It was good. Better than good. "Where did you learn to cook?" she asked. "Mostly trial and error. Spent a winter sick once. Had to figure out what I could stomach. Learned after that." "Were you alone?" "Yeah." "That must have been hard." He shrugged. "Had worse." She wanted to ask about that, about his past, about the scars, about the stories people told. But his expression had closed off. Not angry, just distant. They ate in silence. After dinner, Elias cleared the table while she washed dishes. It had become their routine. He'd cook or she would, then they'd clean together. Efficient, quiet. But tonight, when she reached for a pot, their hands touched. She jerked back like she'd been burned. Elias stepped away immediately. Sorry. No, She didn't know what to say. Her heart was racing for no reason. I'm not used to it. I know. He dried his hands. I'll be more careful. He left her to finish the dishes alone. Abigail stood at the wash basin, hands shaking in the warm water. What was wrong with her? It was just a touch. Accidental. Meaningless. But it had felt like something bigger. That night, lying in the loft, she couldn't sleep. The wind rattled the shutters. Snow hissed against the windows. Downstairs, she could hear Elias moving around, banking the fire for the night. Then silence. She stared at the ceiling and wondered what she was doing. What she wanted. What any of this meant. Elias had given her freedom, had told her to choose. But how did you choose when you'd spent your whole life being chosen for? When every decision had been made by someone else, her father, the town, circumstances beyond her control? She didn't know how to want things, didn't know how to be herself, didn't even know who herself was. Outside, a branch cracked under the weight of ice. The sound echoed through the valley like a gunshot. Abigail pulled her blanket tighter and tried to sleep. The morning came with a different kind of cold, the kind that seeped through walls and settled in your bones. Abigail woke to frost on the inside of the window above her bed, delicate patterns like lace across the glass. Her breath came out in clouds. She dressed quickly, layers upon layers, and climbed down the ladder. Elias was already awake, crouched by the stove, feeding it split wood. The fire inside glowed orange through the iron grate. "Coffee's ready," he said, without turning around. "Thank you." She poured herself a cup, wrapped her hands around the warmth. Through the window, she could see the valley below. Endless white, the trees like dark scratches against snow. Beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. "Storm's coming," Elias said, standing up. "Big one by the look of it. Clouds are moving wrong." "Wrong how?" "Too fast, too low." He moved to the window, studied the sky. "We'll need to bring in extra wood. Make sure everything's secured. Could last a few days." "What do you need me to do?" He glanced at her, surprised maybe that she'd asked. "Can you handle the inside? Make sure we've got water melted, food accessible, lanterns filled?" "Yes." "Good. I'll handle outside." They worked through the morning. Abigail melted snow in every pot and bucket they had, filled the lanterns with oil, took stock of their food stores. Elias brought in firewood until they had stacks against every wall, checked the shutters, reinforced the barn door where the horses sheltered. By noon, the wind had picked up. By mid-afternoon, the first flakes started falling. By evening, the world had disappeared. Abigail stood at the window, watching the snow come down so thick she couldn't see the porch railing 10 feet away. The wind screamed like something alive, throwing itself against the cabin walls. "Never seen anything like this," she said quietly. Elias was at the table, sharpening his hunting knife. The rhythmic scrape of steel on stone was oddly comforting against the chaos outside. You get used to it, or you don't. Either way, you learn to respect it. Does it scare you? The storm? He paused, considered. No, but I don't take it lightly either. Mountains don't care about you. They'll kill you if you're stupid or unlucky. Sometimes both. She moved away from the window, sat down across from him. Why do you live up here, then, if it's so dangerous? Because it's honest. He tested the blade's edge with his thumb. Down in town, people lie. They smile while they stab you in the back. They take and call it civilization. He set the knife down. Up here, if the mountain wants to kill you, it does it to your face. I prefer that. That's a lonely way to live. Maybe, but it's mine. Abigail traced a pattern in the wood grain of the table. How long have you been alone? 5 years? Since I came here. And before that? His expression shifted, not quite closing off, but something guarded sliding into place. Before that, I was someone else. She waited, hoping he'd continue, but he just picked up his knife again, went back to sharpening. The storm raged through the night. Abigail lay in her loft, listening to the wind tear at the roof, feeling the whole cabin shudder with each gust. Snow found its way through cracks she hadn't known existed, dusting her blankets with white powder. She wondered if the cabin would hold, if they'd wake up buried, if anyone would even know they'd died. But morning came. The cabin stood. And Elias was already up, heating water for coffee, like nothing had happened. The storm lasted 3 days. 3 days trapped inside with nothing but each other and the howling wind. They fell into a rhythm, cooking, reading, maintenance tasks. Sometimes they talked. More often, they didn't. But the silence between them had changed somehow. Less awkward. More comfortable. On the second day, Abigail found a deck of cards in a drawer. "Do you play?" she asked, holding them up. Elias looked up from the ledger he was updating. "Been a while. My mother taught me before—" She stopped. "She liked poker. Your father probably learned from her." "Probably." She shuffled the cards, the familiar motion soothing. "He just didn't know when to quit." They played through the afternoon. Simple games at first. War, rummy. Then Elias taught her a version of poker she'd never seen. She lost the first few hands badly, but she learned fast. By the 5th game, she was giving him trouble. "You're good at this," he said, studying his cards. "You sound surprised." "I am. Most people can't read a bluff worth a damn." She smiled despite herself. "You have a tell." "I do not." "You do. When you're bluffing, you tap your thumb against your cards, twice, right before you bet." Elias set his cards down slowly, looked at his hand, then at her. "How long have you known?" "Since the 3rd hand. And you didn't say anything. You didn't ask." Something that might have been respect crossed his face. Smart. They played until the light faded and they had to light the lanterns. Outside, the storm showed no signs of stopping, but inside, the cabin was warm, almost cozy. "Elias?" Abigail said as they were putting the cards away. "Yeah? Thank you. For this. For, She gestured around the cabin. "Not making this harder than it has to be." He was quiet for a moment. "You don't need to thank me for treating you like a person." "Most men wouldn't. I'm not most men." "No," she agreed softly. "You're not." That night, she slept better than she had since arriving. The storm was still raging, but somehow it felt distant, safe on the other side of solid walls. On the 3rd day, the wind finally died. The silence when it stopped was almost louder than the storm had been. Elias opened the door to a wall of snow. It had drifted against the cabin, piled nearly to the roof on one side. He grabbed a shovel and started digging. "Let me help," Abigail said. "You don't have to." "I know. Let me help anyway." They worked together, carving a path to the barn. The horses were fine, scared maybe, but unharmed. Elias checked them over while Abigail hauled water from the melted snow they'd stored. The world outside was transformed. The valley below was a perfect white bowl, the trees heavy with snow. The sky was that particular shade of blue that only came after a storm, sharp and clear and cold enough to hurt. "It's beautiful," Abigail said, leaning on her shovel. Elias looked out at the view. "Yeah, it is. Do you ever get lonely up here? Really lonely?" He didn't answer right away. "Sometimes, but lonely's better than hurt." "Is it?" He met her eyes. "Used to think so. And now?" "Now I'm not so sure." Something passed between them in that moment, some understanding she couldn't quite name. Then Elias turned away, went back to shoveling, and the moment broke. They spent the rest of the day digging out. By evening, they'd cleared paths to the barn, the woodpile, the well. Abigail's back ached. Her hands were blistered inside her gloves. But she felt good, useful. That night Elias cooked again. A stew thick with meat and vegetables, bread he'd made while she was hauling water. They ate at the table, tired and hungry. "You're stronger than you think," he said suddenly. Abigail looked up, surprised. "What?" "You worked all day, didn't complain, didn't quit." He tore off a piece of bread. "Most people from town wouldn't last an hour up here." "I'm from town." "No, you lived in town, there's a difference." She didn't know what to say to that, so she just kept eating. Later, after the dishes were done and the fire banked, she started to head up to the loft. But she paused at the ladder. Elias? He was settling into his bedroll by the fire. Yeah? Why did you say that? About me being stronger than I think? He was quiet for a long time. Because it's true. And because I don't think anyone's ever told you. Her throat went tight. Good night. Night, Abigail. The days that followed developed their own rhythm. Mornings were for chores, feeding the horses, bringing in wood, cooking breakfast. Afternoons, Elias would work on his projects while Abigail read from his collection of books. Evenings, they'd cook together, eat, sometimes play cards, or just sit by the fire. It was strange how quickly it started to feel normal. One afternoon, about a week after the storm, Abigail was reading when Elias came in from outside carrying something wrapped in cloth. Got something for you, he said. She set her book aside. What is it? He unwrapped the cloth to reveal a pair of boots, heavy leather, lined with fur, clearly made for mountain winters. They're too big for me, he said. Ordered them wrong a couple years back. Figured they might fit you. She stared at the boots. They were practical, well made. Not pretty, but sturdy. Try them on, he said. She unlaced her worn shoes, the same ones she'd worn to the wedding, with soles so thin she could feel every rock through them, and pulled on the boots. They fit perfectly. Better than anything she'd ever owned. How did you know my size? Guessed, he shrugged. Looks like I guessed right. Elias, these must have cost... They were sitting in a trunk doing nothing. Now they're useful, that's all. But it wasn't all. She could see it in the way he wouldn't quite meet her eyes. He'd planned this, had them waiting, had probably known her size from watching her walk. Thank you, she said quietly. You'll need them if you're going to go outside. Can't have you freezing your feet off. Am I? Going outside. If you want to. Cabin gets small after a while. The next day he took her out. Showed her the trails around the cabin, taught her how to read the snow for animal tracks. They found deer prints, rabbit warrens, the distinctive drag marks where a fox had caught something. You hunt all this yourself? She asked. Most of it. Trap some. Fish when the creek isn't frozen. Will you teach me? He looked at her surprised. You want to learn? If we're going to be up here, I should know how to survive, in case something happens to you. Nothing's going to happen to me. But if it did... He studied her face for a moment. All right, I'll teach you. And he did. Over the following weeks, Elias taught her how to set snares, how to track game, how to tell which plants were edible and which would kill you. He showed her how to read the weather, how to navigate by landmarks, how to build a fire in the snow. She was terrible at most of it at first, clumsy with the snares, too loud on the trail, impatient with the waiting that hunting required. But she kept trying. And slowly, she got better. One morning, she checked her snares and found a rabbit, her first successful catch. She stood there in the snow, staring at the small brown body, feeling something fierce and proud rising in her chest. She brought it back to the cabin. Elias was chopping wood out front. I caught something, she said, holding it up. He set down his axe, came over, examined her snare work. Clean set, good placement. He met her eyes. Well done. That night they ate the rabbit she'd caught. Elias showed her how to skin and clean it properly, how to cook it so the meat stayed tender. It was the best meal she'd ever tasted, not because of the food, but because she'd earned it herself. Thank you, she said as they ate, for teaching me. You did the work. But you showed me how. He nodded, accepting that. You're a quick study, better than I expected. What did you expect? Honestly, I thought you'd hate it up here. Thought you'd last maybe a month before you wanted to leave. I might still want to leave. That's fair. But not today. Not today, he agreed. The weeks passed. Winter deepened its grip on the mountain. Some days it was too cold to go outside except for necessary chores. Other days the sun would shine and the world would turn into a glittering wonderland of ice and snow. Abigail learned to love both kinds of days. The quiet ones inside with her books and the fire. The bright ones outside where she could test her skills, push her limits. She was changing. She could feel it. The girl who'd stood at that altar in Silver Ridge, scared, ashamed, certain she was worthless, that girl was being buried under something new, something stronger. One evening, they were preparing dinner when Elias said, "You've put on muscle." She looked down at herself. It was true. Her arms were stronger from carrying wood, her legs harder from hiking through snow. Her whole body felt different, capable instead of cumbersome. "Is that bad?" she asked. "No, it's good. Means you're eating right, working hard." He handed her a knife. "You look healthy." It was the first time anyone had ever said that to her. Not thin, not small, healthy. "I feel different," she admitted. "Stronger, maybe." "You are stronger." "Not just physically." She started cutting vegetables. "I feel like, I don't know, like I'm becoming someone else." "Not someone else, just more yourself." She considered that while they cooked. Maybe he was right. Maybe this was who she'd always been underneath the shame and the fear. The mountains were just stripping away everything that didn't belong, leaving only what was real. That night, after dinner, Elias brought out a bottle of whiskey. "What's this for?" Abigail asked. "Been up here 2 months. Figured that's worth marking." He poured 2 small glasses, handed her one. She sniffed it, made a face. "I don't really drink." "Neither do I, not usually." He raised his glass. "But tonight seems like a good night for it." She clinked her glass against his, took a sip. It burned all the way down, settled warm in her stomach. "That's awful," she said. "Yep." "Why do people drink this?" "Damned if I know." They both laughed. And then they were really laughing, the kind that came from somewhere deep and genuine. When was the last time she'd laughed like this? Years, maybe. Or never. Elias poured them each another small measure. They sat by the fire, sipping slowly, talking about nothing important. Stories from childhood, funny things they'd seen, small memories. "Tell me about your family," Abigail said eventually. "Before here," his expression shifted, the easy warmth draining out. "That's a long story." "We've got time." He stared into his glass. "I was married, had a daughter. Emma, she was 6. Abigail went very still. "Was?" "Fire took our house. I was out on patrol. I was a marshal then, down in Wyoming. Got back to find—" He stopped. Swallowed hard. "Found nothing. Just ashes and bodies." "Elias, I'm so—" "Don't." He held up a hand. "Please, I can't hear sympathy right now." She nodded, stayed quiet. "They said it was an accident, lamp oil, but I knew better." His voice was flat now, emotionless. "I'd put away a man named Cutler the month before. He swore he'd make me pay. 3 days after the fire, I found him in a saloon, bragging about it." "What did you do?" "I killed him." He said it simply. "Shot him in front of 20 witnesses. Then I killed the 2 men with him because they'd helped. Then I turned in my badge and left." The fire crackled in the silence. "That's why you're up here," Abigail said finally. "You're hiding." "No, I'm done." He looked at her. "There's a difference. Hiding means you're still running. I stopped running. I just stopped everything. Until now." "Until now," he agreed quietly. "Why did you really take me?" she asked. The truth this time. He took a long drink from his glass. "When I heard about Maddox planning to take you, I saw Emma, saw my wife, saw every woman who'd ever been treated like property because some man decided he had the right." He set the glass down hard. "I couldn't save them, but I could save you. Maybe that makes me selfish. Maybe I did it for myself, not for you, but I did it." Abigail felt tears on her face. She hadn't realized she was crying. "You did save me," she said. "From Maddox, from my father, from everyone who ever told me I was worthless." She wiped her eyes. "You gave me a chance to be something else. You did that yourself." "No, we did it together." He looked at her for a long moment, really looked, and something in his expression changed, softened. "Yeah," he said finally. "I guess we did." The whiskey bottle sat between them. Outside, snow began to fall again, gentle this time. Inside, the fire burned steady. "I'm not going to leave," Abigail said. "When spring comes, I'm staying." "You sure? There's a whole world out there." "I know, but this is where I want to be." It's hard up here. Lonely, dangerous. I know that too. She met his eyes. I'm staying anyway. Elias nodded slowly. All right then. All right. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the fire burn down to embers. And for the first time since her mother died, Abigail felt like she was home. The next morning brought new snow and new routines, but something had shifted between them. The careful distance Elias had maintained started to close. Not physically. He was still respectful, still cautious. But emotionally, the walls were coming down. They talked more. About his life before. About hers. About the future they were building together, even if neither of them said it out loud. One afternoon, Abigail was baking bread when Elias came in from outside, his face grim. "What's wrong?" she asked. "Tracks. Coming up from the valley. Recent." Her stomach dropped. "How recent?" "This morning. Maybe 2 hours old. Could be travelers, someone lost. Could be." But his tone said he didn't believe it. Or it could be Maddox. "But the debt's paid. You said—" "I said it was legal. Doesn't mean he accepted it." Elias went to the cabinet, pulled out his rifle, started checking the ammunition. Men like Maddox don't like being told no. Fear crept up her spine. "What do we do?" "We wait. We watch. And if they come—" He loaded the rifle with calm efficiency. "We handle it. I don't want you to get hurt because of me." He looked at her. "This isn't about you. This is about what's right." "Elias, we're not having this argument." He set the rifle by the door. "You're my wife. Legal and binding. That means something. And if Maddox or anyone else wants to change that, they'll have to go through me." She wanted to protest. Wanted to tell him it wasn't worth it, that she wasn't worth it. But the look on his face stopped her. He believed she was worth fighting for. And maybe, after all these weeks, she was starting to believe it too. They didn't come that day. Or the next. But the tracks remained, a threat frozen in snow, reminding them that the world below hadn't forgotten. Elias kept watch. He'd stand at the window for long stretches, rifle within reach, studying the tree line like he could see through the pines to whatever waited beyond. He checked the trails twice daily, looking for fresh signs. At night he slept lighter, waking at every sound. Abigail tried to continue normally, cooking, reading, maintaining their routines. But the tension had settled over the cabin like another storm, this one made of waiting and dread. On the third day she found him at the window again, jaw tight. "You can't watch forever," she said. "Can try." "Elias, you need to sleep, really sleep." "I'm fine." "You're not." She moved to stand beside him. "You look exhausted." "Had worse." "That's not the point." She touched his arm. He went still under her hand. "If they come and you're too tired to think straight, what good does that do either of us?" He looked down at her hand, then at her face. "You're worried about me." "Of course I am." Something crossed his expression. Surprise, maybe, or something softer. "Been a long time since anyone worried about me." "Well, I do. So stop being stubborn and get some rest." "What about the watch?" "I'll watch." When he started to protest, she cut him off. "I know what to look for now. You taught me, and I can shoot well enough to make noise if I need to." "Abigail, I'm not asking." She used the same tone he'd used on her 100 times, firm, final. A smile ghosted across his face. "You sound like me." "Learned from the best?" He studied her for another moment, then nodded. 2 hours. "Wake me if you see anything, anything at all." "I will." He went to his bedroll, lay down fully clothed with his boots still on. Within minutes, his breathing had deepened into real sleep, the kind his body had been desperate for. Abigail stood at the window, watching the valley. The afternoon sun turned the snow to diamonds. Nothing moved except wind-scattered powder and the occasional bird. But she kept watching anyway, the rifle leaning against the wall beside her. This was her home now. Her life. And she'd be damned if she'd let anyone take it without a fight. When Elias woke 3 hours later, she'd let him sleep longer than promised. The sun was setting. He came to the window, stood close enough that their shoulders almost touched. "Anything?" he asked. "Nothing. Just snow and trees." "Good." He didn't move away. "Thank you." For what? For giving a damn. She looked up at him. In the fading light, the harsh lines of his face had softened. He looked tired still, but more human somehow. Less like the dangerous stranger from the church, and more like the man who taught her to set snares and read the weather. You've given me more than I ever thought I'd have, she said quietly. Of course I give a damn. His hand found hers, rough calluses against her work-hardened palm. Abigail. The horses screamed, they both moved instantly. Elias grabbed his rifle, threw the door open. Abigail snatched her coat and followed, her heart slamming against her ribs. The barn door was open, swinging in the wind. Inside, the horses were panicking, eyes rolling white, hooves striking the stalls. Stay behind me, Elias ordered. He approached slowly, rifle ready. Checked the corners. Nothing. But the horses were terrified of something. Then Abigail saw it. Blood in the snow, a trail leading away from the barn, into the trees. Elias. He saw it too, followed the trail with his eyes. Mountain lion, maybe, or wolf. Would they come this close? If they're hungry enough. He moved to calm the horses, speaking low and steady until they settled. Check the latch, see if it was forced. She examined the door. The latch was intact, but it wasn't secured. It's not broken, just open. I latched it this morning. I know I did. They looked at each other, the same thought passing between them. Not an animal. Get inside, Elias said. Now! They backed toward the cabin, Elias keeping his rifle trained on the tree line. Nothing moved, but the feeling of being watched crawled up Abigail's spine like ice water. They made it inside. Elias barred the door, checked the windows, loaded extra ammunition. Could have been the wind, Abigail said, not believing it. Wind doesn't unlatch doors. He positioned himself where he could see both the front window and the side. Someone's out there. Maddox? Or someone he sent, testing us, seeing what we do. What do? We don't panic. We don't give them what they want. He glanced at her. And we don't separate. You stay where I can see you. Understand? She nodded. Her hands were shaking. She clasped them together to make them stop. Night fell. They kept the lanterns low, curtains drawn. Elias maintained his watch. Abigail tried to read but couldn't focus. The words blurred together, meaningless. Around midnight, something hit the cabin wall. Hard. They both jumped. Elias raised the rifle. Another impact. Then another. Rocks, Abigail realized. Someone was throwing rocks at the walls. Trying to scare us, Elias said. Don't let them. But her heart was racing anyway. She moved closer to him, hating herself for the fear but unable to stop it. The rocks stopped. Silence pressed in, somehow worse than the noise. Then a voice cut through the darkness, loud, mocking. Boone, I know you're in there. Elias's jaw clenched. Maddox. Come out and talk like a man, or are you hiding behind that fat cow you stole from me? Abigail flinched. The words hit like physical blows. Fat cow. Even now. Even here. Don't listen, Elias said quietly. He's trying to get in your head. It's working. I said don't listen. He raised his voice, shouting toward the door. You're trespassing, Maddox. Debt's paid. You got no claim here. Laughter echoed from the darkness. Multiple voices. He'd brought men with him. That debt was mine to collect. You had no right. Had every right. Legal transfer. You want to dispute it? Take it to court. Courts are for civilized folk. We're a long way from civilization, Boone. More laughter. Closer now. They were surrounding the cabin. Elias moved to the side window, checking angles. 3 of them, at least. Maybe 4. What do they want? Me dead. You broken. He said it matter-of-factly. Standard approach for men like him. We can't fight them all. We can hold them off till morning, then we'll see. He looked at her. You know how to reload? You taught me. Good, because I might need you to. He handed her the ammunition pouch. Their fingers touched briefly. His were steady. Hers were not. Abigail. He waited until she met his eyes. Whatever happens, whatever they say, you are not what they claim. You hear me? She nodded, throat too tight to speak. Say it. I'm not what they claim. Damn right you're not. Another voice called out, younger than Maddox. Just give us the girl, Boone. We'll take her off your hands. Do you a favor. She ain't much to look at, but she'll do for the camps. Bile rose in her throat. The camps. Mining camps up in the high country, where men paid for women and nobody asked questions. Elias's face had gone hard as stone. Over my dead body. That can be arranged, Maddox again. Last chance, Boone. Send her out and we leave you be. Go to hell. A gunshot cracked the night. The window beside Abigail's head exploded. Elias shoved her down, returned fire. 2 shots, controlled and precise. A scream from outside. He shot me! Son of a bitch shot me! Get back, Maddox shouted. Get to cover! Silence again, but heavier now. Violent. Abigail's ears were ringing. Glass littered the floor around her. Cold air poured through the broken window. You hit? Elias asked, eyes still on the darkness outside. No, you. No. He moved to the other window, watching. That'll make them more careful, but also more angry. How long can we hold them off? Long as we have to. But she heard the uncertainty beneath his confidence. They were outnumbered, surrounded, and Maddox wasn't the type to give up. Hours crawled by, no more shots, no more voices, just the sound of wind and their own breathing. Elias stayed at the window. Abigail reloaded when he handed her the rifle, her hands moving automatically through the motions he'd taught her. Load, prime, return. Load, prime, return. She'd never thought she'd use these skills for real. Had imagined hunting rabbits, maybe a deer. Not men. Dawn came slowly, the sky lightening from black to gray to pale blue. As visibility improved, Elias scanned the tree line methodically. There, he said suddenly, behind the big pine. See the smoke? She looked, a thin trail rising through the branches. Campfire? They settled in for a siege. He rubbed his face. Smart. They know we can't leave. So what do? We wait for them to get impatient. Men like Maddox, they don't have the discipline for a long wait. They'll make a move. And when they do, we make sure it's their last mistake. The morning dragged on. Abigail made coffee, forced herself to eat bread even though her stomach was in knots. Elias drank but wouldn't eat, too focused on watching. Around noon, movement in the trees. 3 men stepped into the clearing. Maddox in the center, flanked by 2 others. One had his arm in a makeshift sling, Elias's bullet from last night. They stayed at the edge of rifle range. Careful. Maddox cupped his hands around his mouth. Boone, we need to talk. Elias didn't answer. I got a legal writ here. Says that girl's mine by rights. Her father never paid the full debt. Lying bastard, Elias muttered. Louder. Show me the writ. Come out here and I'll show you. Not happening. Bring it to the door. Maddox laughed. You think I'm stupid? The second I get close, you'll put a bullet in me. Then I guess we're at an impasse. Don't have to be. Maddox gestured to his men. We can settle this fair, you and me. Winner takes the girl and the claim. Abigail grabbed Elias's arm. Don't. It's a trap. I know it's a trap. Then why are you considering it? Because I'm running low on options. He looked at her. We can't stay in here forever. Food's good for maybe 2 weeks, water less than that, and they know it. So we wait them out. They'll leave eventually. Will they, or will they just burn us out? He turned back to the window. Maddox isn't a patient man. Elias, please. What's it going to be, Boone? Maddox called. Fight me like a man, or hide in there like a coward? Elias's jaw worked. She could see him calculating, weighing choices, all of them bad. Then Abigail did something she'd never done before. She stepped in front of the window, put herself between Elias and the outside. No, she said. Move. No. Abigail, you don't get to sacrifice yourself for me. I won't let you. This isn't your choice. Like hell it isn't. She planted her feet. You told me I had choices now. Well, I'm choosing, and I choose not to watch you walk into an ambush. He stared at her. For a moment she thought he'd physically move her aside. But something in her expression stopped him. "Then what do you suggest?" he asked. "I don't know, but not this. Anything but this." "Time's running out, Boone," Maddox shouted. "Getting dark soon. You gonna hide all night too?" Elias looked past her, out the window, his mind working. "There might be another way," he said slowly. "What way?" "Sheriff's in Ridgeway. 2 days' ride from Silver Ridge, 3 days from here in good weather. You think he'd come? If someone told him there's an armed standoff over a disputed claim, yeah, he'd come." He looked at her. "But someone would have to go get him." Understanding hit her. "Me. You know the trails now, know how to navigate, and Maddox doesn't know you can ride alone." "What about you?" "I hold them here, keep their attention." He gripped her shoulders. "You get to Ridgeway, bring the sheriff back. We settle this legal." "And if you can't hold them? If they—" "I've held worse odds." His hands tightened briefly. "Trust me." She wanted to argue, wanted to tell him it was too dangerous, too risky, but she could see in his face that he'd already made the decision. "When?" she asked. "Tonight, after dark. Take the gelding, he's faster. Follow the creek bed down to the valley road, then east toward Ridgeway. Stay off the main trails." "Elias, you can do this. I know you can." She swallowed hard. "What do I tell the sheriff?" "Truth. Maddox is trying to collect a paid debt with armed force, trespassing, assault, attempted kidnapping." He released her shoulders. "That'll be enough to bring him running." Outside, Maddox was getting impatient. "Last chance, Boone. Fight me or I'm coming in there." "Hold your damn horses," Elias shouted back. Then, quieter, to Abigail. "Start packing. Light. Just what you need. And dress warm." She nodded, moving on autopilot. Pulled together supplies while Elias kept Maddox talking through the door, negotiating terms he had no intention of honoring. As darkness fell, Elias helped her into the heavy coat he'd given her weeks ago, checked her supplies. Gave her his compass. "Follow it east," he said. "Don't stop except to rest the horse. And if you run into trouble—" "I know. Make noise. Fire the gun." "No." He pressed the pistol into her hands. "If you run into trouble, you shoot to kill. No warning, no hesitation. Understand?" She looked at the gun, at him. "I understand." He pulled her close suddenly, fierce and brief. "Be careful." "You too." They moved to the back window, the one facing away from Maddox's camp. Elias had already removed the boards, creating an exit. The gelding was saddled and waiting, tied to a tree just beyond the clearing. "When you hear me fire 3 shots, you go," he said. "Don't look back. Don't stop." Her heart was hammering. 3 shots. "I'll count to 30, then fire. That gives you time to reach the horse." She climbed through the window, dropped into snow up to her knees. The cold hit her like a fist. She waded toward the tree line, every step feeling exposed and vulnerable. Behind her, Elias's voice rose in argument with Maddox. Keeping their attention forward, she reached the gelding, untied him with shaking hands, put her foot in the stirrup. 3 shots cracked the night. She swung into the saddle and kicked the horse into motion. Behind her, shouting erupted, men running, more gunfire. But she didn't look back. She bent low over the gelding's neck and rode. The forest swallowed her. Trees whipped past in the darkness. The horse knew these trails, following them by instinct more than sight. Abigail just held on, trusting the animal, trusting Elias's training, trusting herself. The sounds of the cabin faded. The night grew quiet except for hoofbeats and her own ragged breathing. She rode for hours. The moon rose, casting silver light through the branches. The creek bed appeared below, frozen and glittering. She followed it down, down, out of the mountains. Her body ached. Her hands were numb on the reins. But she kept moving. Elias was counting on her. She wouldn't let him down. Dawn found her on the valley road. The gelding's pace slowed to a walk. She'd stopped once to rest, letting the horse drink from a stream while she ate jerky, with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. The mountains loomed behind her. Somewhere up there, Elias was alone, outnumbered, holding off men who wanted him dead. She kicked the horse faster. Ridgeway appeared before noon, a proper town, bigger than Silver Ridge, with a main street and painted buildings and people moving about their business. Abigail rode straight to the sheriff's office, dismounted clumsily, legs barely holding her, stumbled through the door. A man looked up from a desk, older, graying, with a star pinned to his vest. "Help you, miss?" "My name is Abigail Boone," she said, her voice hoarse. "My husband is Elias Boone, and Roy Maddox is trying to kill him over a debt that's already been paid." The sheriff stood up slowly. "Elias Boone? From up in the high country?" "Yes." "Please. Maddox has 3 men with him, maybe more. They surrounded our cabin. Elias is holding them off, but I don't know how long." "Slow down." He came around the desk. "Roy Maddox from Silver Ridge? That Maddox?" "Yes. He claims my father's debt was never fully paid, but it was. Elias paid it all. Legal transfer. But Maddox won't accept it, and now he's—" "I know Maddox." The sheriff's expression had gone hard. Been waiting for him to step over the line. Sounds like he finally did. He grabbed his coat. "Jennings, Thompson, get saddled. We're riding." 2 deputies appeared from a back room. The sheriff was already loading rifles, moving with purpose. "How many days' ride?" he asked Abigail. 3 normally, but I did it in 1 night and half a day." He whistled low. "That's some riding, ma'am. Horse must be half dead." "He needs rest and water." "Thompson, see to her horse. The lady too. Get her food and coffee." He looked at Abigail. "You did good getting here. Real good. Now let us handle the rest." "I'm coming with you." "Ma'am." "He's my husband. I'm coming." The sheriff studied her face, saw something there that made him nod. "All right. But you stay back when we get there. This might get ugly." "I know." They rode out within the hour. Fresh horses, armed men, riding hard for the mountains. Abigail led them back the way she'd come, following landmarks she'd memorized. The creek. The lightning-struck pine. The rock formation like a broken tooth. They rode through the night, stopping only to rest the horses. The deputies were good men, quiet, competent, asking no questions beyond what they needed for the job. As dawn broke on the 2nd day, they reached the mountain trail. Smoke rose in the distance. The cabin. The sheriff raised his hand, signaling halt. They dismounted, moved forward on foot. As they crested the ridge, Abigail's breath caught. The cabin still stood. Windows broken, walls scorched, but standing. And in front of it, Elias stood with his rifle trained on 3 men kneeling in the snow. Maddox and his companions. Disarmed. Defeated. Elias looked up as they approached. His face was bruised, blood dried on his temple. But he was alive. His eyes found Abigail. Something passed between them, relief, recognition, something deeper she didn't have words for. "Sheriff," Elias said calmly, "appreciate you coming. Looks like you handled things fine without me." "Had motivation." His gaze hadn't left Abigail. The sheriff moved to Maddox. "Roy Maddox, you're under arrest for trespassing, assault with a deadly weapon, and attempted kidnapping. Anything you want to say?" Maddox spat in the snow. "This ain't over." "Yeah," the sheriff said. "It is." The deputies secured the prisoners. The sheriff took statements, and through it all, Abigail stood beside Elias, close enough to touch. When the sheriff finished his paperwork, he looked at them both. "You'll need to come to town, give testimony before the judge." "We'll come," Elias said. "When the weather clears." "Fair enough." He tipped his hat. "Mrs. Boone, that was brave what you did, riding through the night like that." "I had to," she said simply. "He's my husband." The sheriff smiled. "Lucky man." He turned to his deputies. "Mount up. Let's get this trash back to civilization." They left, taking Maddox and his men with them. The valley grew quiet again. Elias and Abigail stood in the snow outside their damaged cabin, alone again. "You came back," he said. "Of course I came back. Could have kept riding, gone somewhere else, started over. This is my home." She looked at the cabin, then at him. "You're my home." He reached for her hand, held it tight. "Thank you for bringing the sheriff, for—" She kissed him. It was awkward, uncertain. She'd never kissed anyone before. But it was real, and when she pulled back, his eyes were wide. "Abigail, I choose this," she said. "I choose you. I choose us. No more waiting, no more space." He cupped her face with his rough hands. "You're sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything." He kissed her again, gentle this time, careful, like she was something precious. When they finally broke apart, the sun was fully up. The mountains gleamed in morning light. They had a cabin to repair, damage to assess, a life to rebuild. But they'd do it together. And for the first time in years, Elias Boone believed in something beyond survival. He believed in tomorrow. They stood there in the snow for a long moment, hands clasped, breathing visible in the cold air. The cabin behind them bore the scars of the siege, broken windows, bullet holes in the walls, scorch marks where someone had tried to set fire to the porch. But it had held. They had held. "We should go inside," Elias said finally. "You need to warm up. That ride." "I'm fine. You're shaking." She was. Now that the adrenaline was fading, exhaustion crashed over her like a wave. Her legs felt weak. Her hands trembled despite being tucked in his. He kept one arm around her as they walked to the cabin. The door hung crooked on its hinges. Inside was worse. Furniture overturned, glass everywhere, the smell of gunpowder and smoke lingering in the air. Elias settled her in the one chair that hadn't been damaged, wrapped a blanket around her shoulders. "Don't move. I'll get the fire going." She watched him work. His movements were stiff, careful. He was hurt worse than he'd let on. When he reached up to arrange kindling, he winced. "Let me see," she said. "It's nothing." "Elias!" He turned. She stood up, moved to him, unbuttoned his shirt despite his protests. The bruising across his ribs was spectacular, purple and black spreading across his side. She touched the edge gently. He hissed. "Broken?" she asked. "Cracked maybe. Had worse." "Stop saying that." Her voice came out sharper than she intended. "Stop acting like getting hurt doesn't matter. I'm alive. That's what matters. And if you died, if I'd come back to find—" Her throat closed. She couldn't finish. His hand covered hers against his ribs. "But you didn't. I'm here. We're both here." "Barely. Barely counts." She wanted to be angry with him, wanted to yell at him for taking such risks, for standing alone against 4 armed men, for not having a better plan. But the anger wouldn't come. Only relief. Overwhelming, exhausting relief. "I was so scared," she whispered. "The whole ride to Ridgeway, all I could think was, what if I was too late? What if— Hey!" He tilted her chin up. "You weren't too late. You got there. You brought help. You saved us both. You held them off. We did this together." He brushed hair from her face. "That's how it works now, together." She nodded, not trusting her voice. They worked through the afternoon cleaning up the damage, swept broken glass, boarded the windows temporarily, righted furniture. The work was familiar, grounding. Each task a step toward normal. As evening fell, Elias made a simple meal from their remaining supplies. They ate mostly in silence, too tired for conversation. But it was a comfortable silence now, the kind that came from shared experience, shared survival. "We need to go to town," Elias said as they were finishing. "Give testimony like the sheriff said." "When?" "Few days. Need to repair the windows first, make sure the cabin's secure." He paused. "You ready to go back? To Silver Ridge?" She thought about it. The town that had mocked her, dismissed her, sold her, the faces in that church, watching her humiliation. "Will my father be there?" she asked. "Probably." "Then no. I'm not ready." She met his eyes. "But I'll go anyway, because it needs to be done." "We don't have to." "Yes, we do. This ends properly. Legal. Final." She set down her fork. "I won't spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder, wondering if someone else is going to come for us." He studied her face. "You've changed." "Have I?" "The woman I married would have been terrified at the thought of going back." "I am terrified," she admitted, "but I'm going anyway." Something like pride crossed his expression. "That's the difference." They left 3 days later. The cabin was as secure as they could make it. The horses rested and ready. Abigail wore the dress she'd been married in. It fit differently now, looser in some places, tighter in others where muscle had replaced softness. The ride down was easier than her midnight flight had been. They took their time, camped one night on the trail. Elias's ribs were healing but still painful. He tried to hide it. She pretended not to notice. As they descended into the valley, familiar landmarks appeared. The lightning-struck tree, the old mill, the road into Silver Ridge. Abigail's stomach tightened. "You all right?" Elias asked. "No, but I will be." They rode into town mid-morning. People stopped to stare. Whispers followed them down the main street. She kept her eyes forward, back straight. Let them look. Let them whisper. She wasn't the same girl who'd left. The sheriff's office was in the center of town, next to the courthouse. They tied their horses and went inside. Sheriff Morrison looked up from his desk. He was younger than the Ridgeway sheriff, with a soft belly and softer eyes. He'd never been much use when it came to actual law enforcement. "Elias, Mrs. Boone," he stood awkwardly. "Heard you had some trouble up in the mountains." "Roy Maddox and 3 others attempted to forcibly take my wife," Elias said flatly. "Shot up my property, tried to burn us out. Sheriff Blake from Ridgeway has them in custody." "Yes, well?" Morrison shuffled papers. "I've been informed. Judge wants to see you both. Give statements." "When?" "He's available now, actually. Courthouse next door." They followed him through a connecting door into the courthouse. The building smelled like old wood and stale tobacco. Their footsteps echoed on the wooden floors. The judge's chambers were at the end of a long hallway. Morrison knocked. "Come in?" Judge Whitmore sat behind a massive desk, spectacles perched on his nose. He was old, maybe 70, but sharp-eyed and straight-backed. "Mr. and Mrs. Boone." He gestured to chairs. "Please sit." They sat. Elias kept his hand near hers, not quite touching but close enough to feel. "I've reviewed the incident reports from Sheriff Blake," Whitmore said. "Quite a situation you found yourselves in." "Not of our choosing," Elias replied. "No, I don't suppose it was." He looked at Abigail. "Mrs. Boone, I understand you rode through the night to bring the sheriff. That's remarkable." "My husband needed help." "Indeed. And you, Mr. Boone, held off 4 armed men alone for nearly 2 days. 3 men, 1 was already wounded. Still impressive." Whitmore leaned back. "I need to understand the origin of this dispute. Roy Maddox claims he held a legitimate debt against Samuel Carter. Is that true?" "It was true," Elias said. "Carter owed Maddox $800. Gambling debts, documented and signed. Maddox was within his rights to collect." "But you intervened." "I paid the debt in full. Legal transfer of obligation." "Maddox accepted payment and signed release of claim. I have the documentation." "May I see it?" Elias pulled folded papers from his coat. Whitmore examined them carefully. "This appears legitimate." He looked at Abigail. "And you, Mrs. Boone, were part of this transaction." She felt heat rise in her face. "My father offered me to Maddox as collateral. Maddox sold that obligation to Elias." "So you were sold? Twice?" "Yes." The word tasted bitter. "And did you consent to any of this?" "No, sir, but I married Elias legally. The Reverend in Silver Ridge performed the ceremony." "Under duress?" She glanced at Elias. He gave a slight nod. "Truth," his expression said. "Tell the truth." "I didn't want to marry anyone," she said quietly. "But if I had to marry someone, I'm glad it was him." Whitmore's eyebrows rose. "That's an interesting answer." "It's an honest one." "I see." He set the papers down. "Here's what I'm going to rule. The debt transfer was legal. Maddox had no grounds to pursue you after accepting payment. His actions constitute trespassing, assault, and attempted kidnapping. He'll stand trial for those crimes." Relief flooded through her. "However," Whitmore continued, "there's still the matter of the original transaction. Selling a human being as debt collateral is legally murky territory. Some would argue it's valid under contract law. Others would call it slavery, which is illegal." Abigail's heart sank. "What does that mean?" "It means I need to make a determination about the validity of your marriage." He looked between them. "If the original transaction was illegal, then the marriage based on that transaction may also be invalid." "No." The word burst out before she could stop it. "You can't. We're married, legal and binding. The Reverend was performing a ceremony based on a potentially illegal contract." Elias's hand found hers, gripped tight. Your Honor, with respect, the legality of how we came to marry doesn't change the fact that we did. We've lived as husband and wife for 3 months. We've consummated the marriage. His voice was steady, but his hand trembled slightly against hers. You can't just dissolve that. Whitmore was quiet for a long moment. You're right. I can't. But I can rule that the original contract was illegal, which would free Mrs. Boone from any obligation to remain married. I don't want to be freed, Abigail said. You may feel differently once you've had time to consider. I won't. She leaned forward. Judge Whitmore, I understand what you're trying to do. You're trying to give me a choice, to undo what my father did, what Maddox tried to do. And I appreciate that. But I already made my choice. I choose to stay married to Elias Boone. Mrs. Boone. He gave me choices when no one else would. He taught me I was worth more than what people said. He stood against 4 armed men to protect me. Her voice shook, but she kept going. I love him, and I'm not leaving him because of some legal technicality about how we started. Silence filled the chamber. Whitmore looked at Elias. And you? Do you wish to remain married? More than anything, Elias said quietly, even though the circumstances were... I don't care about the circumstances. I care about her, about us. He turned to Abigail. I married her to save her from Maddox, but I'd marry her again tomorrow for no other reason than I can't imagine my life without her. Abigail's eyes burned. She blinked hard against tears. Whitmore removed his spectacles, cleaned them slowly. This is highly irregular. Life is irregular, Elias said. Indeed it is. He put his spectacles back on. Very well. I'll rule that while the original debt transaction was of questionable legality, the marriage itself was performed in good faith and has been consummated and maintained. The marriage stands. You remain legally wed. The relief was so intense Abigail felt dizzy. However, Whitmore continued, I'm also ruling that Samuel Carter's debt is satisfied in full and no further claims can be made against either of you regarding this matter. Is that clear? Crystal clear, Elias said. Good. Sheriff Morrison will prepare the documentation. You'll need to sign before you leave. He stood. And Mrs. Boone? Yes, sir? You showed remarkable courage, both in writing for help and in speaking your truth here today. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Thank you. They left the chambers. Morrison was waiting in the hallway to take them to sign paperwork. As they followed him, Abigail felt like she was floating. It was over. Really over. Maddox would face justice. The marriage was legal and binding. No one could take this away from them. The paperwork took an hour. Signatures, dates, witness marks. Morrison was efficient if nothing else. When they finally stepped outside, the sun was past noon. The street was busy, people going about their business, shopping, talking. And there, standing by the general store, was her father. Samuel Carter looked older than she remembered, thinner, grayer. He was staring at her like he'd seen a ghost. Elias noticed. You want to talk to him? Did she? She wasn't sure, but her feet were already moving, carrying her across the street. Her father straightened as she approached. Up close, he looked even worse, hollow-eyed, hollow-cheeked. Abigail, he said. His voice was rough, unused. Father. They stood there awkwardly. 100 things needed saying. Neither of them knew where to start. You look well, he said finally. Different. I am different. I heard about Maddox, about what happened. Did you? He stopped, started again. I'm sorry for what I did, for selling you to... You didn't sell me to Elias, you sold me to Maddox. Elias bought the debt to save me from him. Her father flinched. I didn't know Maddox would... I thought he just wanted the land. You knew exactly what he wanted, you just didn't care. That's not true. Isn't it? She kept her voice level, calm. When did you ever care about what happened to me? After Mother died, you drank, you gambled, you lost everything. And when you had nothing left, you traded me away like I was property. I was desperate. So was I. Every single day. Desperate for you to see me, to care. to be my father instead of just a drunk who happened to live in the same house. He looked away. You're right. You're right about all of it. I know I am. Can you forgive me? The question hung between them. Could she? Should she? I don't know, she said honestly. Maybe someday, but not today. He nodded slowly. That's fair. I'm married now, really married, and I'm happy. Happier than I've ever been. She glanced back at Elias, who was waiting at a respectful distance. He's a good man, better than you deserve to have as a son-in-law. I know. If you're sober, if you stay sober, maybe we can talk again, someday. But until then, she trailed off. Until then, you don't want to see me. Until then, I need to focus on my own life, on building something good, something that's mine. Her father's eyes were wet. You remind me of your mother. She was strong like you, stronger than me. I know. She'd be proud of you. Abigail's throat went tight. Goodbye, Father. She turned and walked back to Elias before she could change her mind, before the guilt could claw its way up and make her soften. She'd said what needed saying. That was enough. Elias took her hand. You all right? I will be. They mounted their horses and rode out of Silver Ridge. This time, no one stared. No one whispered. They were just another couple leaving town. But Abigail felt different, lighter. Like she'd set down a weight she'd been carrying so long she'd forgotten it was there. The ride back to the mountains was quiet. They stopped at the same camping spot as before, built a fire, ate a simple meal. As the stars came out, Abigail lay with her head on Elias's shoulder, his arm around her. What you said to the judge, she began. About marrying me again, did you mean it? Every word. Why? Because you're brave and strong and stubborn as hell. He kissed the top of her head. Because you rode through the night to save me. Because you stood up to Maddox when you were terrified. Because you looked your father in the eye and told him the truth. Those are all recent things. What about before, when you barely knew me? He was quiet for a moment. You want the truth? Always. I saw myself in you. Someone the world had decided wasn't worth saving. Someone who'd been beaten down so many times they stopped fighting back. His arm tightened around her. I couldn't save my family. But maybe I could save you, and in saving you, maybe save myself too. Did it work? Yeah, it worked. She tilted her head to look at him. I love you. I love you too. They kissed under the stars, gentle and unhurried. No urgency, no desperation, just the quiet certainty of two people who'd found each other in the wreckage and decided to build something new. The next morning, they continued home. The cabin appeared through the trees, scarred but standing, smoke rising from the chimney they'd banked before leaving. Their home. They unpacked, settled back into routines. But something had shifted. The careful distance was gone. They moved around each other easily now, comfortable with proximity. That night, Abigail didn't climb to the loft. She stayed downstairs in Elias's bed, in his arms. It wasn't perfect. There were awkward moments, nervous laughter, fumbled touches. But it was real. And it was theirs. In the days that followed, they repaired the last of the damage from the siege. New windows installed. Bullet holes patched, scorch marks sanded away. The work was hard but satisfying. Each repair a small victory. Each fixed thing a promise. They'd endured. They'd survived. They'd keep surviving. One afternoon, while Elias was outside working on the porch, Abigail found herself standing at the window looking out at the valley. The snow was starting to melt. Spring would come soon, the world would open up again. But she had no desire to leave. This was where she belonged. In these mountains, in this cabin, with this man who'd given her back herself. She heard the door open behind her, felt Elias's presence. What are you thinking about? He asked. Everything. Nothing. She turned to face him. How different my life is from what I thought it would be. Better or worse? So much better it doesn't even seem real sometimes. He crossed to her, pulled her close. It's real. I promise you that. I know. She rested her head against his chest, listened to his heartbeat. Thank you. For what? For seeing me when no one else did. You were always worth seeing. You just needed someone to point it out. They stood there, holding each other, as the afternoon light faded into evening. Outside, the mountains stood eternal and indifferent. But inside the cabin, in the warmth of the fire and each other's arms, they'd found something the mountains couldn't touch. They'd found home. Spring came slowly to the mountains, reluctant and stubborn. The snow melted in patches, revealing dead grass and mud underneath. The creek swelled with runoff, rushing and loud. Birds returned, their calls echoing through the valley at dawn. Abigail woke one morning to find Elias already outside, standing at the edge of the clearing. She wrapped a shawl around her shoulders and joined him. "What are you looking at?" she asked. He pointed down the slope. "See that flat section, below the pine grove?" "Yes." "Been thinking. Could clear it, plant vegetables, maybe build a root cellar." He glanced at her. "If we're staying long-term, we should be more self-sufficient." "We are staying long-term." "I know, but saying it and planning for it are different things." She understood what he meant. They'd survived the winter, survived Maddox, survived the judgment of Silver Ridge. But surviving wasn't the same as living, wasn't the same as building a future. "Then let's plan for it," she said. "Let's build something that lasts." They started that week, clearing brush, moving rocks, turning soil that hadn't been touched in years. The work was backbreaking. Abigail's hands blistered, then calloused. Her muscles ached in new ways. But she kept at it. Elias worked beside her, never ahead of her. When she needed to rest, he rested too. When she pushed harder, he matched her pace. They were partners in this, equal. One afternoon, as they were taking a break, sharing water from a canteen, Abigail said, "Tell me about Emma, your daughter." Elias went still. "Why?" "Because you never talk about her, about any of them. And I think you need to." He stared at the half-cleared field. "I don't know if I can." "Try. For me." He was quiet so long she thought he'd refuse. Then slowly, words started coming. She looked like her mother, same dark hair, same eyes, brown with gold flecks. She was small for 6, but fierce, stubborn. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "She wanted to be a lawman like me. Wore a tin star I made her. Practiced her draw with a stick. She sounds wonderful." "She was. They both were." His voice roughened. "My wife, Caroline, she was patient with me. I wasn't easy to live with. The work, the danger, it made me hard sometimes. But she never gave up on me." "How did you meet?" "Church social. She was serving punch. I was trying to avoid conversation." He shook his head. "She asked me why I looked so miserable at a party. I told her I didn't like crowds. She said good, neither did she, and dragged me outside. We talked for 3 hours. Abigail tried to imagine a younger Elias, less scarred, less guarded. "You loved her." "More than anything." He turned the canteen in his hands. "When I lost them, I lost myself too. Couldn't see the point of anything anymore. Couldn't see why I should keep going when they didn't get to." "But you did keep going." "Barely. First year up here, I thought about ending it. Every day. Had the gun loaded, had it in my hand more than once." Her chest tightened. "What stopped you?" "Cowardice, maybe. Or stubbornness. Figured if I was going to die anyway, might as well see if winter would do it for me." He looked at her. It didn't. And somewhere in that second winter, I realized I was still alive. Still waking up, still doing the work. Not because I wanted to, but because I could. And maybe that was enough. Is it still enough? No. He reached for her hand. Now I want more. Want a future. Want to build something that matters. Want... He stopped. Started again. Want to deserve this. Deserve you. You already do. I killed men, Abigail. Killed them and felt nothing. I was empty for so long I forgot what it was like to feel anything real. And now? Now I feel everything, and it terrifies me. She understood that. The fear of losing something once you'd found it. The vulnerability of caring. "I'm terrified too," she admitted. "Every day I wake up and think this can't be real, that I'll blink and be back in Silver Ridge, back to being nothing." "You were never nothing." "I felt like nothing, for so long." She squeezed his hand. But then you looked at me like I mattered, and I started believing maybe I did. You matter, more than you know. They sat in silence, hands linked, looking out at the field they were building together. The work wasn't done, wasn't even half done, but it was started, and that felt like something. The weeks passed in a rhythm of work and rest. They planted seeds, vegetables mostly, hardy varieties that could survive the mountain climate. Abigail had never gardened before, but she learned about spacing and depth and timing, learned patience. Elias built the root cellar, digging into the hillside behind the cabin. It took him 3 weeks of hard labor. When it was finished, Abigail stocked it with preserved food from winter, dried meat, jarred vegetables, stored grain. "Look at this," she said, standing in the cool darkness of the cellar. "We did this. Built something from nothing." Not from nothing, from work. Same thing. He smiled. Actually smiled. It transformed his face, made him look younger. "You're getting philosophical on me." "Maybe I am." They were happy. It was strange to realize. Happiness wasn't something either of them had expected to find. But there it was anyway, growing like the seeds they'd planted. Fragile but real. One evening in late spring, they were sitting on the porch watching the sunset when a rider appeared on the trail. Elias tensed immediately, hand moving toward his rifle. But as the rider got closer, Abigail recognized the uniform. The Ridgeway Sheriff. They stood as he approached. He dismounted, looking tired from the ride. "Sheriff Blake," Elias said. "Wasn't expecting you. Figured you'd want to know. Maddox's trial finished yesterday." Abigail's heart jumped. "And?" "Guilty on all counts. Judge gave him 15 years hard labor." Blake pulled out a document. "Also got this for you. Official record of the verdict. Says right here that all claims against you and your property are dismissed. Permanently." Elias took the paper, scanned it, handed it to Abigail. She read the words 3 times, making sure they were real. Dismissed. Permanently. No one could come for them now. No one could take this away. "Thank you," she said, voice unsteady. "Thank you for riding all this way." "Least I could do. What you did, riding through that storm to get help, that took guts." He tipped his hat. "You're good people. Both of you. Deserve some peace." After he left, Abigail stood holding the document. This piece of paper was more than a legal ruling. It was permission to stop looking over their shoulders, permission to believe in tomorrow. "It's over," she said. "Really over." Elias pulled her close. "Yeah, it is." That night, they celebrated with the last of the whiskey. Not much, just enough to toast their freedom. To toast each other. "To new beginnings," Elias said, raising his glass. "To second chances," Abigail added. They drank. The whiskey still tasted awful. They laughed about it, the laughter turning into kisses, the kisses turning into more. Later, lying in bed with Elias's arm around her, Abigail said, "I want to do something. Something meaningful." "Like what?" "I don't know yet, but I keep thinking about how alone I was, how worthless I felt, and I wonder how many other women are out there feeling the same way. Probably a lot. So maybe we could help them. Somehow. Give them a place to go. A way out." Elias was quiet, thinking. "You mean like a refuge?" "Maybe. I don't know how it would work, but yes, something like that." "That's a big undertaking." "I know, too big probably. I'm talking. Thinking out loud." "No." He shifted to look at her. "I think it's a good idea, a really good idea." "You do?" "We've got the space, got the skills to teach, and we know what it's like to need saving." He brushed hair from her face. "We could start small, see what's possible." "You'd really want to do that? Bring people up here? If it means helping someone the way you were helped?" "Yeah, I'd want that." She kissed him. "I love you." "Love you too." The idea took root like their garden, slow but steady. They talked about it over the following weeks, what it would require, how it would work, the risks and the possibilities. They decided to start with one person. Just one. Test the waters. see if it was viable. Word spread slowly through the territory, not advertising exactly, but whispers. Quiet conversations in town when they went for supplies. A mention to Sheriff Blake that they might have space for someone who needed it. 2 months later, a woman arrived. Her name was Sarah. She was younger than Abigail, maybe 19, with a black eye and a split lip. She'd walked for 3 days to reach them, carrying everything she owned in a threadbare bag. "Sheriff Blake said you might help me," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "My husband, he drinks, gets mean. I can't go back." Abigail knew that fear, that desperation. "You don't have to go back. Come inside." They gave Sarah the loft, Abigail's old room, now empty since she'd moved downstairs. Fed her, let her rest, didn't push her to talk until she was ready. When she did talk, the story was familiar. A bad marriage, no money, no options, nowhere to go. "You can stay as long as you need," Abigail told her. "We'll teach you skills, help you figure out what comes next, and when you're ready to leave, if you want to leave, we'll help with that too." "Why?" Sarah asked. "Why would you help me? You don't know me." "Because someone helped me once, and I'm passing it forward." Sarah stayed for 6 weeks. In that time, she learned to shoot, to trap, to survive on her own. Her bruises faded, her voice got stronger, and when she finally decided to leave, it was on her own terms. She had skills now, confidence, options. "Thank you," she said the day she left. "You saved my life." "No," Abigail said. "You saved your own life. We just gave you the tools." After Sarah left, others came. Not many, 1 or 2 a season. Women fleeing violence, running from debts, escaping situations that had no other exit. Abigail and Elias took them in, taught them, helped them find their footing. The cabin grew. They added a bunkhouse for the women who stayed, expanded the garden, built a workshop where skills could be taught. It wasn't easy. Some women struggled with the isolation, others couldn't handle the work. A few left in the middle of the night, too scared to stay, too scared to go home, just scared. But some thrived. Some found themselves the way Abigail had. And watching them transform, watching them go from broken to whole, gave Abigail more purpose than she'd ever thought possible. 2 years after Maddox's trial, Abigail stood in the garden, hands dirty from planting, and realized she was completely happy. Not the fragile, uncertain happiness of new love. The deep-rooted happiness of a life well lived. Elias came up behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist. "What are you smiling about?" "Everything, this place, what we've built. You. We built it together." "I know, that's what makes it perfect." "It's not perfect. Garden's got weeds, bunkhouse roof leaks, and that fence I built last week is already sagging." "Okay, fine, it's perfectly imperfect." He laughed. Actually laughed. The sound was becoming more common. "I'll take that." She turned in his arms. "Do you ever regret it? Taking me on? Changing your whole life?" "Never. Not once. He kissed her forehead, the same gentle gesture from their wedding day. "You're the best thing that ever happened to me. Even though I came with complications? Especially because of that. Easy things aren't worth having. That's very philosophical for a mountain man. I have layers." "You do." She rested her head against his chest. "Thank you for everything. For seeing me. You were always worth seeing. The world was just blind." They stood there in the garden, surrounded by growing things, while the mountains rose eternal around them. This was their life now, built from wreckage and bad choices and desperate chances, built on the foundation of 2 broken people who'd found each other and decided to be whole together. That night, after dinner, after the current residents, 2 women named Mary and Elizabeth had gone to bed, Abigail and Elias sat by the fire. "I got a letter today," Elias said, "from Morrison, the sheriff in Silver Ridge." Abigail looked up. "What did he want?" "Your father died. 3 weeks ago. Liver failure." She felt something twist in her chest. Not quite grief. Not quite relief. Something complicated and unnamed. Was he sober? At the end? "Letter says he was. Been sober for over a year. Working as a clerk in the general store." "That's good, that he tried." "He left you something, his mother's wedding ring." Morrison says it's at his office whenever you want to collect it. Abigail thought about her father, the man he'd been, the man he'd become at the end. She'd never forgiven him, not really, but she'd made peace with not forgiving him. I'll pick it up next time we go to town, she said. Not because I want it, but because it meant something to my grandmother. She shouldn't be forgotten just because he was broken. You're more generous than most people would be. I'm not generous. I'm trying to be better than the hurt. Trying not to let what he did define who I am. I think you've succeeded. She smiled. We both have. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the fire burn. Outside, an owl called. The wind moved through the trees. The mountains stood watch. Do you ever think about them? Abigail asked quietly. Caroline and Emma? Every day? Does it still hurt? Yeah, but different now. Less like bleeding and more like an old scar. Still there. Still tender sometimes, but not killing me anymore. Do you think they'd approve of this? Of us? Elias considered. Caroline would have liked you. She always rooted for the underdog. And Emma? His voice caught. Emma would have followed you around like a puppy. She loved strong women. I'm not that strong. You rode through a blizzard to save me. You faced down your father. You built this whole operation from nothing. You're the strongest person I know. I learned from you. No, you taught yourself. I just stopped standing in your way. She reached for his hand. Do you think we'll always be this happy? I think we'll have hard days, losses, things that break our hearts. He squeezed her hand. But yeah, I think we'll always have this. Each other, this life we built. Promise? Promise. The seasons turned. Summer gave way to fall, fall to winter, winter to spring again. The cycle repeated, reliable and constant. Women came and went. Some stayed weeks, others months. Each one left changed, stronger, more certain, more themselves. Abigail taught them what Elias had taught her. Survival skills, self-reliance. But more than that, she taught them their own worth. Taught them they didn't need saving, just tools and time and someone who believed in them. On a bright autumn morning, 3 years after Maddox's trial, Abigail stood on the porch looking down at the valley. The garden was harvested, the cellar stocked. 5 women were currently staying in the bunkhouse, learning and healing and finding their way. The cabin that had once held only Elias's lonely silence now rang with voices, laughter, life. Elias came to stand beside her. What are you thinking? That I spent so long believing the world had no place for me. That I was too much, too big, too wrong. She leaned into him. And now I've built a place where people like me belong, where we all belong. We built it. Together, she agreed. In the distance, smoke rose from Silver Ridge, the town that had mocked her, dismissed her, sold her. It felt small now, insignificant. Her life had grown so far beyond those narrow streets and narrower minds. Do you ever regret leaving? Elias asked. Ever wish you'd had a different life? Never. This is exactly where I'm supposed to be. Even though it's hard, even though it's isolated, especially because of that. This isn't the easy life, but it's real. It's mine. Ours. She turned to face him. We took the worst things that ever happened to us and built something good from the wreckage. That's not nothing. No, it's everything. They kissed, soft and familiar. When they pulled apart, Elias was smiling. What? Abigail asked. Just thinking. That girl at the altar, terrified, certain she was worthless. If she could see herself now, she'd probably faint. She'd be proud. Abigail thought about that girl, the one who'd kept her eyes down, who'd expected cruelty, who'd believed every horrible thing people said about her. That girl was gone now, not erased. Her memory was important, but transformed, grown into someone new. I'm proud of her too, Abigail said, for surviving long enough to become me. That afternoon, a rider appeared on the trail. But this time, Abigail didn't tense, didn't fear. They got visitors regularly now, women seeking refuge, supplies being delivered, occasional lawmen checking in. This rider was young, maybe 16, riding a horse that looked ready to collapse. Please, the girl gasped as she dismounted. Please, I need help. My sister, she's in trouble. Our stepfather—" "Slow down," Abigail said, moving to steady her. "You're safe. We'll help. Start from the beginning." The girl's story spilled out. Familiar themes, violence, desperation, nowhere else to turn. She'd heard rumors of a place in the mountains where women helped women, had ridden for 2 days to find it. "Your sister," Abigail said. "Where is she?" "Still at home. She's only 14. He won't let her leave, but if I can bring help—" "We'll bring help." Abigail looked at Elias. He was already moving toward the barn, already planning. "You'll come?" the girl asked, disbelieving. "You'll actually help?" "Of course we will." Abigail squeezed her shoulder. "That's what we do." They rode out an hour later. Abigail, Elias, and the girl, whose name was Ruth. It was a day's ride to the homestead where Ruth's sister waited. They made it by evening, approaching carefully. The stepfather was a brute, big, mean, drunk. But Elias was bigger and meaner and stone sober. When the man tried to fight, tried to claim his rights, Elias put him down fast and hard. They rode away with Ruth's sister, leaving the stepfather unconscious in the dirt, and a note saying the sheriff would be informed. On the ride back, the younger sister, her name was Grace, clung to Ruth and cried. Relief, fear, overwhelming emotion. Abigail rode beside them, remembering her own rescue, the feeling of being saved, of mattering enough for someone to risk themselves. "Thank you," Grace whispered when they stopped to rest. "Thank you for coming." "You don't need to thank us," Abigail said. "Just pass it forward someday, when you're strong enough to help someone else." "I will. I promise." Back at the cabin, they settled the sisters in the bunkhouse, fed them, let them decompress. Over the following weeks, they healed, learned, grew stronger. Ruth proved to be a natural with horses. Grace had a gift for growing things. The garden flourished under her care. When they eventually left, 6 months later, it was to start their own homestead 2 valleys over, close enough to visit, far enough to be independent. "You'll come see us?" Grace asked the day they left. "Of course," Abigail promised. "You're family now." And they were. All of them. Every woman who passed through, who learned and grew and left stronger than she'd arrived. They were family. A chosen family, built on shared experience and mutual support and the radical belief that women were worth saving. Years passed. The refuge grew into something bigger than Abigail had imagined. Word spread throughout the territory. Women came from hundreds of miles away, seeking sanctuary, seeking skills, seeking themselves. Not all of them stayed. Many moved on, built their own lives elsewhere. But they stayed connected, wrote letters, sent news, created a network of strong women who'd found their worth in the mountains, and in the center of it all were Abigail and Elias. Partners. Partners in survival, in building, in love. They'd started as 2 broken people forced together by circumstance. They'd become something neither had thought possible. Whole. On their 5th anniversary, Elias gave Abigail a gift. A small wooden box, hand-carved, beautiful. "What's this?" she asked. "Open it." Inside was a ring, simple silver engraved with mountains and trees. "The first time we married, you didn't have a choice," Elias said. "I want you to have one now, so—" He took the ring, held it out. "Abigail Carter Boone, will you marry me? For real this time. Because you want to, not because you have to." She was crying. Happy tears. Overwhelmed tears. "Yes. Yes, of course, yes." He slipped the ring on her finger. It fit perfectly. They remarried that spring in the meadow they'd cleared together. No church, no crowd. Just them and the women currently staying at the refuge and Sheriff Blake, who'd become a friend. When Elias kissed her this time, it wasn't gentle or careful. It was fierce and certain and full of everything they'd built together. "I love you," he said against her lips. "I love you too." The celebration lasted into the evening. They ate food from their garden, drank cider they'd made, told stories around the fire. It was simple, perfect. As the stars came out, Abigail looked around at the faces lit by firelight. Women who'd arrived broken and were leaving whole. Elias beside her, solid and real. the mountains rising around them, eternal and protective. This was her life. Not the one she'd been born into, not the one people had planned for her, but the one she'd chosen. The one she'd built from nothing but determination and hope and the belief that she deserved better. "What are you smiling about?" Elias asked. "Just thinking about that day in the church, when everyone came to watch me be humiliated. And I wish I could go back and tell that girl what was waiting for her. Tell her to hold on. Tell her it gets so much better than she can imagine. She wouldn't believe you. Maybe not, but she'd want to. She'd be right to." He pulled her close. "Look what you became. Look what we became." Abigail looked at the refuge they'd built, the lives they'd changed, the love they'd found, the future stretching ahead, uncertain but promising. She'd been told her whole life she was too much, too big, too wrong. But here, in these mountains, she'd learned the truth. She wasn't too much. The world had just been too small. And so she'd built a bigger world, one where women like her not only survived but thrived, one where worth wasn't measured by appearance or compliance, but by strength and heart, and the courage to keep going when everything said to quit. "Tell me again," she said to Elias. "Tell me this is real." "It's real, all of it. You're real. I'm real. This life we built, it's all real. Promise?" "I promise." She believed him, believed in this life they'd created, believed in second chances and new beginnings, and the possibility of choosing yourself even when the whole world says you're not worth choosing. The fire burned down to embers. The women drifted off to bed. Eventually, only Abigail and Elias remained, sitting under the stars, hands linked, silent and content. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. New women seeking refuge, new work to be done, new choices to make. But tonight, in this moment, everything was exactly as it should be. Two broken people had found each other in the wreckage and built something beautiful. Not perfect, nothing ever was, but real, true, worth fighting for. And in the end, that was more than enough. It was everything.